Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Habayta podcast. I'm so excited to be joined today by Alon Ben-Noon, the CEO and co-founder of NeuroSense Therapeutics. Alon, thank you so much for joining today.
Thank you, Shira.
I'm so happy to
Appreciate it.
have you. So, I've been doing a little bit of research. I told you that I have a medical family that I married into, all doctors and researchers, actually. And would love to just understand a little bit about your mission behind this company and this drug that you guys are working on right now.
Absolutely. So our story begins with a chance meeting between a person named Shai Rishoni and myself. Shai, in 2016, was the CEO of Price for Life. It's a non-profit organization for advancing ALS awareness, raising ALS awareness, advancing assistive technologies and therapies as much as possible. This organization was actually founded by Avichai Kremer, another person who suffers from ALS. So now you also understand that Shai, at that time point, was well into his ALS disease, completely paralyzed. And I was actually amazed by this interesting person who was lying down, communicating with his eyes through a computer software, and and we had a very live, interesting discussion. I'm sitting next to him, and he's looking at me with his eyes pupil, and like that, without moving his head because he couldn't at this stage of the disease. And with that, it actually gave me the understanding and motivation that there is something to do here for patients like Shai. For Shai, it was clear that it's too late. But it doesn't matter. It's a life mission, his life mission, who turned to be also my life mission.
Wow.
To advance therapies for people with ALS. And luckily or fortunately, I had and still I do have great relationship with amazing scientists. So I gathered great scientists together, and NeuroSense. This is how NeuroSense basically started. Looking what can we do in order to find a cure. This is the aspiration, but of course, realistically, to find an effective treatment for people like Shai and like Avichai to treat ALS.
That's just an incredible story. I mean, an encounter, a chance encounter that really developed your life mission. What would be really great, I think, is just to share with our listeners, because I know obviously know this disease inside out. And I think many of us were introduced to ALS through the Ice Bucket Challenge that, was created to raise awareness, which it really did. However, I don't think most listeners really understand the disease itself. So can you just explain a little bit about ALS and what contributes to it?
Absolutely. So ALS is a motor neuron disease where basically motor neurons are degenerating and cannot function, cannot send the signals properly to the muscles. So people are losing functionality. Usually it starts with some dysfunction of the hand or the leg, or sometimes it starts with the way a person talks. So it can sound a little bit strange because the muscles are less functioning due to the motor neurons that are degenerating. And then it spreads throughout the body at a certain pace. You cannot predict at what pace, and you cannot predict what will be the next organ that will be affected with the disease.
Wow.
But unfortunately, it's a progressive disease, so eventually the average patient will live somewhere in between 2 to 5 years from symptoms onset. Of course, there are some exceptions that will live over 5 years and sometimes even over 10 years, and other exceptions that will live even less than 1 year with the disease. And only recently, I'm sure that many of the audience heard about about late Eric Dane, an actor, a known, relatively famous actor, who passed away unfortunately last Friday when he had the disease for about a year or so.
Wow. Is this a disease that you're born with? Is this genetic?
So only 10% of the patients carry a genetic a form of the disease. But about 90% of the patients are referred as sporadic patients. So basically, it can be any one of us, any one of the crowd. Fortunately, it's considered a rare disease, so it doesn't affect too many people, but it can affect anyone at any time, somewhere in between the age of 20 till 80 something. And most people may get it around the age of 30 to 60.
Wow, wow. So you really, there's no, I guess, test that you can take to see if you will be, if you'll have symptoms or, this will come later on in life. So it just comes on and then you have a few years at that point.
You're correct. For
Wow.
sporadic patients, there are no tests. For genetic patients, they may know that they are genetic patients because there is or was someone else at the family
Okay.
who carried the gene mutation and was affected by ALS. So if he is known to have a genetic mutation, this gene mutation, then other members from his family may get tested for the same mutation and see if they may develop the disease or not.
But what can you do about that? Let's say you have that information. So God forbid, that you're a carrier. Is there something you could do to help prevent the progression of the disease?
That's a very good point. So currently, there is only one specific gene mutation that affects about 2% of the ALS population,
Okay.
which has a good treatment. So it's a specific treatment for this mutation. And if people find out about this mutation, they may want to receive the therapy as soon as they show first symptom.
Wow. Okay.
And of course, if you treat early, then the results could be turned to be much better. But for the majority of the patients, 98% of the patients, it won't really help them understanding that they have ALS, but it will help them managing the disease properly, managing their life properly. And also nowadays, when we have some promising developments such as PrimeC, the treatment that we're developing at NeuroSense, if they can join a clinical study in an early stage, then they may have hope to live longer and better.
Wow, so that's unbelievable. So talk to me a little bit about PrimeC. My little research that I found was that you're combining two different drugs. So maybe you can just share a little bit about that and how that works and
Absolutely.
what you're seeing. Yeah.
Yeah. So what we found is there are several pertinent targets in ALS, meaning that the reason that the motor neurons are degenerating is caused by several reasons. And we are targeting pertinent targets there in order to create a positive change, hence to slow down the decline or the degeneration of the motor neuron.
Wow.
We found that there are two molecules, different molecules, that each one can address several targets, but together they are working even better and in a synergistic manner on the whole target set. What we did is actually to develop a formulation that can maximize the synergistic effect between these molecules, because these molecules have different properties and they do not go along. So what we actually developed is a novel formulation that creates a better synergistic effect, or actually overlaps the pharmacokinetic profile. I don't want to dwell into too many scientific
Yeah.
terms, but
Yeah.
basically we shifted the pharmacokinetic profile and we extended the release of these molecules in order to have the optimized outcome in order to slow down the disease progression.
Okay, so let's take a step back and just for our listeners, just if God forbid somebody is showing these symptoms, okay, because that my understanding from you is that that's really the only way, besides that's 10% that have the gene, 90% of the population that does have ALS will feel symptoms, right? And then they obviously go to get tested. At what point would they be taking your drug, right? And is it only for a specific root cause? I'm just trying to understand, would it benefit everybody or are there specific cases?
It's an excellent question. So as you mentioned, the sporadic patients are about 90%, but even 98% don't have a good solution today for the disease. So once someone shows first symptoms, and they had no idea if they are carrying a gene or not, but once they are showing first symptoms, sometimes it's also difficult to understand that this is ALS. In many cases, if they have, for example, a foot drop, they will go to a different physician. Sometimes the family physician, sometimes a orthopedic physician, but not necessarily a neurologist. Definitely not one that is expert in ALS. But within time, usually it's a matter of several weeks up to 6 and even 12 months, they will get a diagnosis.
That's a long time if it
It
takes
could be a
12
long
months.
time. Yes. If the mindset is not there that it could be ALS, it might take a long time to actually identify and understanding that this is indeed the cause of the symptoms, that it is ALS. But once they do get the diagnosis, they have an option to join a clinical study. There are several clinical studies with several assets, several potential therapies. If you are in advanced stages such as PrimeC, which is about to enter a phase 3 study, which is a large trial in order to confirm the results of the phase 2 study and to get the drug approved for the benefit of all patients. So in the phase 3 study, patients can receive the treatment. Actually, they have an option to receive the treatment or placebo because we have to measure to show the differences between patients who receive the treatment, the actual treatment versus placebo. So in a clinical study, they have the option to receive the treatment. Actually, the clinical study is set in a way that it provides either the treatment or a placebo. In our case, the likelihood to receive the actual treatment is 2/3. Because we do plan to have 200 participants on PrimeC and 100 on placebo, nobody will know on which treatment arm they are in order to evaluate properly the effect size of PrimeC. But by that, they have the opportunity to receive treatment that can slow down the disease progression. And after 12 months, everyone, all the participants in the study will receive PrimeC, the actual.
Oh, I love that. Okay, that's
It's
really
important.
nice.
It's more ethical. It's
Yes.
the right thing to do.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, first off, I want to say, for me, just based on what you shared so far, I would think that we need to do a better job at educating physicians on diagnosis, early diagnosis, because if you only have, a year to 3 years from diagnosis and it takes you a year to get diagnosed, that's for me, that's a huge issue. So I'm just wondering, like I'm speaking also from experience, thank God not with ALS, but much different situation. But in my personal experience, my daughter was misdiagnosed with having juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, and she was given a crazy medication at 4 years old or even younger. That was a medication for chemotherapy. She was given.
Wow.
And her hair, she was losing her hair, and it was awful. And the misdiagnosis was she had celiac, but the top rheumatologist in Columbia Presbyterian in New York was fixated on the fact that she had JRA and not celiac. And it took me years of fighting with her to get her tested just for celiac. And then it changed. The world changed a little bit just in terms of that disease, that there's more awareness. Like our pediatrician then diagnosed another 3 children from there with celiac that were misdiagnosed with JRA. So I just wonder if that's also part of your mission, is first to, educate the physicians that these are the early onset symptoms of ALS so they could be diagnosed earlier. So your drug, I'm assuming, would work so much better if it was earlier on.
So for us as a company, we are not educating physicians. We are working closely with physicians, but what we are doing is working also closely with patients' organizations,
Yeah.
and we are supporting them. And the part of what you acknowledge as the ice bucket challenge, raising
Yes.
awareness for ALS, it helps both physicians to be more aware of the disease, neurologists and other physicians that are not in this field, just
Yeah.
to understand that if they see a certain symptom, they can and should suspect that it might be ALS and send the patient to the right neurologist if needed. And this is one thing. And the other thing is, by raising awareness, is that people who show symptoms, they will bear in mind that it could be ALS, and they will ask to get the right diagnosis for ALS as well as part of the screening process to understand what they are suffering from.
Mm-hmm.
And
Got
I
it.
agree, it's very important to diagnose it earlier. And in the past, it took even more time to diagnose the patient. Sometimes it was right in the very late stage of their disease, 18 months, even 24 months. But since there is much more awareness about the disease, about ALS, it reduced to 12 and even 6 months, but it's still
Yeah.
not optimal.
Right. No, but it's definitely getting better. So that's really good to hear. So tell me, Alon, just a little bit about your personal journey, right? In terms of, obviously, I know that you met a patient with ALS that really affected you. It's interesting. My husband also became a neonatologist after a personal experience with our oldest son that was also misdiagnosed at the beginning, and he was like, it wasn't handled well, and from there he's like, I'm going to become a neonatologist, and I'm going to, work with parents in the right way. So that
It's
kind
an
of
amazing
inspired.
story, Shira.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to it, but yeah, he was debating between being an orthopedic surgeon and going into neonatology, very different fields. But my son was actually misdiagnosed as having Down syndrome when he was born, because it was such a traumatic birth, and the doctor just blurted out, "Your son has Down syndrome." And it was so traumatic for us. I mean, we were young. It was our first baby. We were in the Rambam hospital in Haifa, and my husband was like, just the way that he spoke to us and the way that he handled it, he was like, I need to be able to work with parents in a better way. And still to this day, every time he tells a parent that their child has Down syndrome, Baruch Hashem, our child does not, but he relates to it in such a special way. So I love and appreciate your story of how, this chance meeting really affected you. But obviously you had to have the know-how, the education, the background in order to say, okay, I'm going to take this and I'm going to turn it into something. So I would love to just understand, your journey and how you got to this, position of being able to say, I'm going to come up with a cure for this.
Sure. So first, sometimes you have to be a bit crazy and a bit too confident, and to believe that it's possible. That's very important.
Absolutely.
I had the background of having a consultancy firm for biotech companies, and I worked with dozens of biotech companies, assisting them developing their drugs. And I always had some more, uh, how should I put it, some kind of affection to CNS diseases of the nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
So when I met with Shai, actually ALS made total sense for me, that with this very horrific disease, there is something that we must be able to do and to change the course of the disease. And as I mentioned, you of course, you don't just need to have certain qualities in you to take this on, but also to have the right relationships and connections to the right people that can also gather and help you advance it forward.
For sure. So
Just
you
by,
had the.
I'll tell you that by training, I'm an industrial engineer and I have also an MBA. So it's not related to,
That's so interesting.
to this world of medication, but almost from day one after graduating, I made the decision that I'm um, intrigued by the pharmaceutical industry and biotech industry. It's an industry that is trying to do good to this world, to bring new treatments to diseases. And then since then I joined this field. And as I mentioned, I also had a consultancy firm that I started. And at the time in 2016, 31st of January 2016, when I met with Shai, I thought that there is something that we can do here.
That's amazing. I mean, I think that the fact that you have an MBA, had a consulting company, that enabled you to be able to say, okay, let me work on a treatment and build a company, around this treatment, having the known. Many people have ideas, and I talk a lot about this on Habayta, but it's, unique to find the amazing entrepreneurs that have the experience to actually then turn it into, a proper organization, company, clinical trial. All these things that you're doing is just amazing. So, Alon, tell me a little bit about, what are you seeing with the medication right now? I know you said that you're going into, further clinical trials, which is the largest one. But up until now, what can you share so far?
In a phase 2 study that we concluded recently with 68 participants, 68 ALS patients, we had 45 on PrimeC and
Okay.
23 on placebo. Again, we maintained the ratio of 2 to 1
Yeah.
to be more ethical, and it's just, again, the right thing to do. What we did is dosing, of course. They did not know what treatment they are receiving, but the 45 received PrimeC and 23 placebo. And what we saw is a change of over 30% difference in the progression rate of these
Wow.
patients. So we slowed down the progression of the disease by over 30%. And we also saw within time that we have differences also with regards to survival. So
Wow.
many participants on PrimeC survived better and longer than their friends on placebo. Currently, we just announced additional long-term survival data where we see that patients on PrimeC benefited from the treatment over 65% better than their friends. They had a better chance to survive than their friends on placebo. And we extended the lifespan by about 15 months, 15
Wow.
months since randomization, and that's considered a lot for this disease.
So right now your focus is on, reducing the time that it takes to, really go through all the awful, symptoms, and also increase the lifespan by 15 months, which or more, I'm assuming. That is the mission right now with PrimeC, or do you see it developing into more of a cure rather than, just managing and extending the lifespan?
So as with regards to PrimeC, with PrimeC we are continuing into the phase 3 study using the exact same formulation that we used in the phase 2, with the expectations and the hope that we can slow down the disease progression and prolong the lifespan. So improving the quality of life and extending the time that the patients will live. We do think that, of course, in the future, we'll need additional good treatments to, again, slow down the disease even further and extend the patients' lives further. So we do intend, we are not just living with that and saying, okay, PrimeC will reach the markets and that's it for us. We did our job. Not at all. PrimeC
Okay.
will do an amazing job once it's
Right.
approved for patients, but there is a lot more to do, and our intention is to do a lot more in order to bring more treatments and hopefully one day soon, also a cure. So not just to, ideally we would have stopped the disease progression now, and the patients could have lived for many, many years. But even more ideally, actually, the optimal or the aspiration is to cure the disease. So even patients who are now 5 or 7, and as I mentioned, there are very few that live it even longer than 10 years, but they are completely paralyzed or almost completely paralyzed. If there is a way to improve their condition and to cure this disease, we will do our best to do it. I don't know to say at this time if humanity at all will be able to cure the disease from a very progressive stage to a completely healthy person, But I do know that it will be possible to improve functionalities.
That's incredible. And just based on timing with your phase 3 clinical trial and then knowing how long it takes to get, FDA approval, what do you think the timeline is until PrimeC is actually available to ALS patients that are not in the clinical trial?
So currently our intention with regards to the US is to run a phase 3 study in the United States, also in Europe and in Israel, but mainly in the United States. We are expecting to start the trial during the summer of 2026, so in the next few months.
Amazing. Okay.
And the recruitment time will take about 12 months to recruit all the 300 participants. And the treatment also takes about 12 months. So end to end, it will be 24 months before we have the results from the double-blind phase. As I mentioned, patients will continue on PrimeC after 12 months, but what we are measuring and the data that will be used for the regulators will be based on 12 months of dosing. So basically 24 months from summer of 2026. So we do hope and expect to complete the study by the summer of 2028 and then get the drug approved by the FDA. If it's, of course, showed success in the phase 3 study, we'll get it approved by the FDA. And if we have the opportunity to get it approved earlier in other territories, such as Canada, and we did announce as a public company, of course, it's not confidential or anything, we put this news out. We did announce that we intend to go to Canada, to Health Canada, and perhaps get it approved even much sooner, based on the already very strong data that we saw in the phase 2 study. So we are in communication and discussions with the Health Canada. And if we can get it approved sooner, so it means that basically in about a year from today, or a year and a very few months, it will be accessible in Canada.
That's amazing. So I'm actually Canadian. I'm originally from Toronto, so that's wonderful to hear. And if there are listeners here that have a relative or a friend that would like to become, part of this phase 3 clinical trial, how would that work? Would they be able to apply?
Of course, they are most welcome to approach us directly, and we will make sure that they are in discussions with their clinicians and they know how and where we are going to start the trial, in which clinical centers. They can find us by just Googling NeuroSense Therapeutics, and if they want to Google something much easier, they can Google 4 letters NRSN, and they will find us easily and they can contact us. Just Google 4 letters NRSN.
Okay, amazing. And I will also, when I post the podcast, I'll include your website link as well, so that they can contact you. And Alon, this was unbelievable. I am, just my heart is with these amazing, incredible ideas and solutions and cures and treatments that are coming out of Israel with incredible Israelis. And it was such an honor to meet you. And I wish you only the best of luck with this next phase. And hopefully next time we speak, you will be on the market and available to really help, help these patients that are fighting this awful disease. So thank you so much, Alon.
Thank you, Shira. The honor is mine. Thank you for hosting me. Thank you very much.